But even as my calm, blurry dreams settled in to block out the coming day, that strangely haunted look in Randall's eyes cast a shadow over all of them. When did he have that look? The next night, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. It was a sharp, gnawing feeling that wouldn't go away, not even as I climbed out of bed to get dressed. That feeling was excitement. I didn't know what was going to happen, but an eager anticipation squirmed inside of me. Tonight would be a turning point for all of the vampires in LA, and I'd be the one to start the fire. I just hoped the fire wouldn't scorch me too. Let's have a look at the stats, make sure we're not, Why? Why? Was it because I tried to leave? When I finally prepared myself physically and mentally, I decided it was time to go. I made my way to the door, stepped outside, and gave my room a final long look. I glanced back at the empty room. For a moment, I travelled back in time to my first night when I stood in a daze on this very spot. Now here I was, about to leave for what might be the final time. But there was no point dwelling in nostalgia. Downstairs in the lobby, Charisse's agents were waiting for me. From their tight-lipped, intense stares, they seemed to feel more anxious than I was. We took several cars to the abattoir, leaving at slightly different intervals in case we were being watched. Nobody spoke up. The few agents sharing my car only whispered a few words to each other. I had my weapons from before still tucked in my jacket, since I was told we'd be able to smuggle in anything we wanted. From the firepower that the agents were packing, it seemed like they expected us to use it. We pulled up a block away from the abattoir, and I followed the agents towards the front entrance. I noticed a few humans trying to get inside the club, only to get swiftly rejected by the bouncers. But as soon as we approached, they let us inside, swinging open the door with a foreboding creak. Randall's route is shorter, isn't it? It seems shorter. The moment I entered the club, a different atmosphere swirled around me. Instead of a crowd of mortals, everywhere I looked, there were only vampires. Tension weighed thickly in the air, as cloying and heavy as the pounding music, but it seemed like Charisse's bait had worked. I saw vampires from all three houses crowding the floor, watching each other uneasily even as they drank and danced the night away. Did they have any idea what was going to happen? No one stopped me as I climbed up to the empty stage, walking over to the microphone. As soon as I approached it, though, I felt more and more eyes flicking onto me. Charisse's agents were watching me closest of all, probably ready to pounce if I chickened out. Suddenly, the music switched off. Everyone started to murmur in confusion, glancing around to see what was happening. Now seemed like a good time to start. Can I have everyone's attention? My voice boomed back to me over the loudspeakers. All the vampires who weren't looking at me before now stared at me wide-eyed. Everybody stayed silent, waiting for my next words. All of you know that the abattoir is neutral ground. Silence. After tonight, it belongs to our faction, just like the rest of LA. I could sense countless eyes piercing into me. Right now, it felt like they were all waiting for me to mess up. Starting tonight, this club and the whole city belong to... Again, there's... Where's mine? I'm gonna... Again, this is the Marcus save, so this is the Randall save. What does mean? A deafening silence. Why can't I do... I'm so confused. I'm so confused. Why can't I do my own? Because this isn't mine. Is there something I have to do? I don't get it. I'm gonna look. Okay, I don't know. I don't know how to get it. I don't know where I went wrong or what I should have done. It's not clear, and I have good rep with the room one. I feel like it should work, but... And also, I don't know how... Like, I looked online and people were like, oh, I maxed out all the reputation with everyone. And I'm like, how the fuck did you do that? Like, this... It's not... I have to go with Charisse, I think. I don't want to. Randall special end requires... Yeah, it requires this one. I'm sorry. The next few seconds felt frozen in time. I'm sorry, Randall. Nobody moved, as if they were waiting for somebody else to move first. As I started to wonder if my microphone had turned off, all hell broke loose. Some of the vampires charged towards me, but another group leaped into them, shooting and clawing them. Is there any point where I can then... No, because everyone's like, oh, you get 4 options. You can choose My Rebellion. Am I supposed to have, like, a determined personality to get it? How do I get a determined personality? I don't know what... I don't know. But another group leaped onto them, shooting and clawing at them. The Askari weren't the only ones who smuggled in weapons. Another throng of people raced for the exits, shoving each other to escape. Oh, this feels good. Helter-skelter, baby, look out. Bodies were already falling to the floor, both dead and alive. Not wanting to be next, I jumped off the stage towards safety. Wait, I see her. She's over there. Get her! Instantly, a pair of furious cries rang out nearby. I could guess who they were talking about. I just want this one to be over. I really do. Darting towards the club's emergency exit, I ducked outside. Gunfire, shouting, and footsteps raced after me. Bullets whizzed over my head, drilling into the wall. Down the street, an alley, another alley, back into the street. No matter how fast I ran, they were right behind me. I felt like an animal fleeing for its life, driven by the pure instinct to survive. But I knew from their voices that I was outnumbered. If only I... Quickly, protect her! At that moment, an urgent cry rang out. A group of Askari agents suddenly raced from a side alley, aiming their guns behind me. More bullets raced past my head, this time in the opposite direction. I turned to see my attackers scattering, chased off by a few Askari. It looked like they might have been Mavar. Were they Randals? Why would... Oh, okay. Of course they would. Yeah. I apologize, Valkii. The agent walking up beside me offered me a grimace, shaking his head. We secured the club just as you left, but not before the enemy escaped. Don't worry about me. You saved me. Of course, but the operation could have been handled more smoothly. Clearing his throat, he motioned towards the main road. The cars are waiting for us nearby. Let's not waste any more time here. Despite our arrangements with the police, we don't want to involve any other mortals in this. And knowing the Mavar, more of them are probably pursuing us. Maybe you do need the determined one, but there's... I can't stop thinking about how annoying it is that it's not clear what you need to get that ending. Like, what kind of personality you need a certain personality, or was it literally that you need what feels like an almost impossible amount of rep to get? I don't know. I might not be a Mavar. I might go as a Golgotha, so that I get a good amount of Golgotha rep in the beginning. I don't know. I just have to hope that the rep doesn't bug out as well, though. Following the agent, I returned with him to Sharice's car, which sped off towards the hotel. The other Askari stayed behind, probably to clean up the mess and prepare for the oncoming chaos. A chaos I played no small part in stirring up. I hate it. This is like a massive betrayal to everything that I've said to Randall, and I hate it. Somehow we managed to arrive at the hotel without any snags. The meeting room, normally empty, was completely packed. Askari vampires were settled on all the couches and chairs, standing around urgently, chattering with each other. But as soon as I entered, the conversations grew quiet, the gathered vampires quickly glancing up to me. Hey, Heath. Heath, who was lingering off by himself, smiled at me weakly. Valkii, I'm glad you managed to arrive unscathed. Sharice rose from her seat, giving me a stiff nod. Her voice was a little firmer and more commanding than normal, maybe because she had an audience. Well, I think you got the effect you wanted. You certainly did, and I applaud you. As I expected, it only took one last push to bring everything to a head, and we had to be the ones to make it. Stepping up beside me, Sharice turned to address the attentive group. I really thought I got my rebellion ending this time. I even talked to Randall about it. I was like, hey, how would you feel about me uniting everyone? And he was like, yeah, cool, I think. Stepping up beside me, Sharice turned to address the attentive group. Her posture seemed rigid, on high alert, even more tense than I'd seen her the other night. Most of you already know the plan for tomorrow, but for Valkyie's benefit and yours, I'll repeat it. After nightfall, we'll bring our forces to the Mavar's only sanctuary near Hollywood. Depending on their response, we'll either escort them outside the city or engage in combat. From there, we can address the rest of their strongholds and ensure none of them slither back into LA. What about the Golgotha? If you would let me finish, I've reached out to Andre, who says he'd be willing to make a last-minute compromise. In exchange for some capital and a promise of safety, they'll leave the city without joining the conflict. That is, if you'll pardon my candor, the most foolish idea I've ever heard. Well, you're a big dickhead, Dante. From across the room, a refined-looking man suddenly called out to us. Excuse me, Dante? We all know how ruthlessly self-serving Andre is, don't we? He's probably already offered the Mavar a similar compromise. To think that he wouldn't betray us is pure idealism, Sharice, and quite unlike you. Sharice seemed to twitch slightly, her eyes narrowing at his remark. Beyond that, I think quite a few of us would find it cathartic, shall we say, if Andre had a permanent home in his graveyard. Wouldn't you agree, Valkii? Yes, there's definitely a chance he would betray us. There you have it, Charisse. Dante leaned back in his chair, smirking contently. Even your favorite agent thinks you're mistaken. Are you going to doubt her judgment too? No matter what you say, she does what he says, so... A few murmurs drifted around the room, most of the Ascari nodding in agreement. If that's the popular opinion, then it's my obligation to represent it. We won't negotiate with the Golgotha, and so we must be prepared to deal with them tomorrow as well. Some scattered applause followed Charisse's statement. I noticed Dante studying me from his chair, stroking his thumb thoughtfully along his lip. Finally, there is one last matter we must discuss. Let us decide how we'll deal with the remaining rebels, as well as Andre and Randall. Charisse's attention shifted from the group to rest on me, her eyes grim and intense. We were debating this before you arrived, Valkii, but our votes were too divided. As someone who spent time with all three of the houses and their leaders, I think you are qualified to break the stalemate. How do you believe we should proceed when the conflict's over? We can force the remaining vampires to join us or leave, put the leaders on trial, or authorize the use of deadly force against them. Oh, I can't choose killing them. I wonder why. Let them all join us or leave. Are you certain of this, Valkii? Yes, it's what we have to do. As soon as I replied to Charisse's question, the gathered Ascari started to murmur in both approval and disagreement, but even the ones who disagreed didn't offer any protests, only shooting me a few dirty looks. Charisse's expression didn't betray what she thought of my choice. She only gave me a sharp nod, adjusting her glasses with a steady exhale. Then everything is settled. Tomorrow we'll begin restoring Los Angeles to a safe place for our kind. The clamour settled down, all eyes returning to Charisse. I just realised this is the last time I'm going to get this ending. A final word of note, the hotel will be heavily guarded tonight, even throughout the day. I don't recommend attempting to leave for all of our safety. I've instructed the guards to refuse anyone entry or exit. Your rooms have all been prepared, so please enjoy a restful sleep knowing you have all supported the right choices for LA's Coven. With a last smattering of applause, the Ascari began to disperse, rising from their seats in groups. A few of them congratulated me as they walked past, patting my shoulder or shaking my hand with two bright smiles. You're quite the interesting woman, aren't you? Just before he stepped into the hall, Dante murmured smoothly to me. To rise so far in such a short time, I wonder what kind of sordid things you must have done behind the scenes. Just remember, Valkii, what goes up must come down. Smile silently. With one last cool chuckle, he slipped outside after the others. Charisse had already left too, so I followed suit, taking the elevator back upstairs. Instead of being put in my old room, though, the clerk gave me a key for a different identical room. Apparently, they'd had to shuffle things around for the other Ascari, and one of them wanted my suite. An uncomfortably sterile smell greeted me inside my new room, a nearly picture-perfect replica that still felt alien and strange. Right as I was about to sleep, my phone suddenly rang. It was Charisse. She called me to tell me that Randall had phoned her earlier. Tomorrow he was going to join us, even if it meant leaving the Mavar. Really? The clan was still planning an attack, but he wouldn't be part of it. Can't talk long, but tell Valkii I love her. Oh my god, more than anything else in the fucking world, politics don't matter anymore. Charisse relayed his message to me faithfully. Oh my god. Randall, you stayed with me even though I betrayed you? She sounded happier than I'd heard her in a long time, maybe ever. Although this can't... No, this can't end well. What am I fucking doing? I am not getting my hopes up. This is going to be awful. He's going to kill Charisse. Or kill me. Something bad's going to happen. It was hard to imagine the two of them working together, but if they did, I had a feeling they'd be an unstoppable force. Finally, I hung up the phone and curled up under the sheets, a weight lifted from my shoulders. Randall's face drifted through my mind, and the last thing I saw was his protective, gentle smile. Before everything drifted away. The car was deathly silent. All I could hear was the soft crescendo and fade of traffic breezing past, muffled under the engine's hum. The agents riding with me stayed quiet, checking their firearms or their watches. No one spoke up, but we all felt what hung in the air. After a short drive, we pulled up on an empty side road. The rest of our force was already stationed nearby, surrounding the Mavar hideout. But it was quiet. Much too quiet. I've been through this ending so many times. Three times now. It feels like a lot, though. Before we left the hotel, Charisse had come up to me wearing her usual stern expression. She made it clear that I had to accompany the agents tonight, but I could choose whether to fight or not. In the end, I decided to... I'll fight, sorry guys. I wanted to be a part of the fray myself, not to stick to the sidelines. Charisse offered me several weapons, so I chose to fight up close and personal with melee. I went with a long pair of knives, light and sharp. It was enough to defend myself and help disable the enemy, but I hadn't been in a real fight against other vampires yet. I just have to trust my instincts would match theirs. Valkii. Sharice's agent stepped past me, giving me a sharp nod. We're heading in. I nod and follow him. I followed the agent into the alley where more Ascari were crouched and hidden in the shadows. Earlier tonight, one of Sharice's assistants had injected us with some kind of strange, potent serum. Apparently, it helped to mask our scents, even from each other. I didn't know what was in it, but it seemed to work. All I could detect was the muddy presence of the others nearby, too faint to pick out individually. But the rebels, where were they? We'll wait 5 more minutes. Addressing us in a whisper, the agent motioned towards the hideout's entry. If they don't show before then, we'll force the door open and raid the interior. The others nodded, shifting in place. Even though they were trained agents, I could sense their uneasiness. 1 minute passed, then 2, then 3. No sign of the Mavar, and the Golgotha didn't show up either. As the Ascari started to shuffle impatiently, the leading agent took a step towards the door. He froze halfway, going rigid. I strained my senses, trying to pick up any new scent, and felt something approaching at unnatural speed. Here they come. All the agents instantly stiffened, searching for the source. I felt them from all directions at once, like a circle closing in, and yet there was no sign of them until... Shapes sprang out from everywhere, from the rooftops, from the sewer entry, bursting through windows and racing off the street to surround us. Within seconds, a cataclysmic fight exploded in front of me. All I could see was gunfire and streaks of blood. Everywhere I looked, corpses were already falling, pools of blood splattering the asphalt. Shrieks and howls blended into one constant roar, and the stench of death clogged my senses. Letting my instincts take over, I charged into the clash of bodies. Before I knew it, I was slashing out with my knives, carving into the nearest enemy. Rah! A blood-curdling scream rang in my ears. I dove forward to slash again. And again. And again. I felt my body moving faster than my mind, dodging and lunging on pure reflex. Bullets grazed my side, missing my skin by less than a hair. Everywhere I turned, figures lunged at me with claws and knives, and each time I returned their attacks, each time I splattered their acidic blood against the ground. Something slashed into my side, but I couldn't even feel the pain. My blood, my animal instincts just wanted more and more and more. To protect, defend my allies, to fight for what I believed in. No, it didn't care about that. That was an excuse. It wanted me to kill because I had evolved to. More and more bodies, more and more blood, each dead enemy sweeter than the last. The air blended into a cacophony of laughter, roars and screams, gleeful and horrified like sounds rising from hell. Some vampires had already given up, turning tail and fleeing for their lives. Others were trying to claw their way to safety, only to get cut down before they could escape. Thank you, everyone. At that moment, a delighted voice rang out over the chaos. Here's Lazarus. Sing-song and manic. It sounded so familiar, but I couldn't place it. Until a skeletal figure blurred across my vision, followed by splatters of blood. It was Lazarus keeping his promise to protect me. Grabbing 2 guns from the ground, he started to fire haphazardly. Thank you! The vampires around him tried to dart away, but his bullets always found them. They collapsed one after another, screaming, tripping over themselves. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you! His eyes were huge, bloodshot, full of obscene delight. Somehow he looked cruelly innocent, like a child crushing ants. Help! No! No matter how much they cried for mercy, his shots kept drilling into their skulls. Lazarus didn't seem to hear them, even as he grabbed fresh guns from their corpses. For a moment, I had the bizarre sense that he wasn't here. He was stuck somewhere deep inside his own head. But wherever he was, I couldn't see it, and I had a feeling I wasn't supposed to. I was yanked back to the fight, carnage still rampaging around me in full force. Each time I blinked, I saw a different body falling down. More and more piling up on the ground in heaps of entrails, shattered bones, crushed organs. Dead friends, dead enemies, and corpses beyond recognition. But in death, all of them looked the same. Oh, and then it's over. The chaos seemed to stretch on and on and on. But at last, the screams died into whimpers. In reality, the fight had only lasted a few minutes, even though it seemed like forever. But because of our monstrous natures, the results were horrific. All around me, dead vampires covered the ground, headless, limbless, or with their hearts cut open. The stench of their blood permeated the air, belching out from their open wounds. Slowly, I realized that we'd won. There were more Ascari still alive, some groaning and shuddering on the ground, others helping tend to the fallen. The Mavar and the Golgotha had fled, leaving only their dead behind. But we'd lost many of our own too. All of these corpses would have to be taken away, and one by one they'd become a tragedy to someone, not just part of a faceless mass. Just as I finally stumbled away from the sea of bodies, a human passed by the alleyway. He froze mid-stride, staring down at us at the mangled bodies littering the concrete. The moment seemed surreal. I almost expected to jolt out of a dream from anesthesia in a dentist chair, to realize that everything that had happened since that night at the club was one long bizarre delusion, and I was back in the normal waking world. The man's eyes met my own. His pupils, like two TV screens switched off, held a blank look that had to be pure, abject horror. Or so I thought, until he shrugged and continued on. At first, I was stunned. It was like the horrible sight hadn't affected him at all. But after a moment, I realized why the man hadn't shown any reaction. He must have thought he'd wandered past a movie set, and somewhere there were eagerly rolling cameras panning slowly across the bleeding corpses to capture every cinematic drop. Because after all, this was Hollywood. Alright, now we get into the proper ending. I don't know what's gonna happen. A quiet night. The same sparkling city, the same distant droning of traffic. The heaviness that hung over both our shoulders, never letting go. Cherise stayed silent, gazing down into the far-off streets. Her once permanent frown was nowhere to be seen. Instead, her face was frozen in a grim, almost emotionless look. She'd worn this expression a lot lately. Ever since that night. Oh no. Months had passed now, but it still seemed like yesterday. The day after the climactic fight, I was called down from my hotel room to meet Cherise. The moment I saw her, I knew something was wrong. Valkii. Her gaze seemed glassy, in a numb state of shock. I'm not sure how to tell you this, but Randall is... She couldn't get the words out like they were caught in her throat. No, that's... Running a hand across her pale face, Cherise pulled off her glasses, slowly shaking her head. Tonight, we found Randall's body in the beach house. He'd been shot in the back with a revolver 4 times. She swallowed, staring at me in silence for a moment. It wasn't me. It wasn't Andre. It wasn't even the hunters. It was one of his followers. Her last words came as a barely audible whisper. When we talked on the phone the other night, Randall agreed to join us because he cared for you, Valkii. He told me his clan didn't matter as much as you did. Saving you was the most important thing for Randall. But someone overheard him. Someone knew about his plans, that he was going to leave. I don't know why does it seem like I've already said this? I haven't. That's very weird. Maybe it's pulling on something else? I don't know, that's weird. I can't believe it. Neither can I. With a long, deep inhale, Cherise put back her glasses. There is someone you need to see. Please bring him in. When she nodded to the agents nearby, they quickly hurried out of the room. If it's fucking Jack, if Jack killed Randall, I'm gonna be mad. A few minutes later, the door swung open again, letting a handcuffed Mavar stumble inside, his arms restrained by 2 agents. Okay, it's just a random Mavar. As soon as our eyes met, his face instantly darkened in a look of hatred. You. It was all your fault. You took him away from us. He snarled at me, spitting on the ground by my feet. He was too fucking beautiful. You ruined him. You made him into a villain like you and that bitch. Wow. What kind of dissonance is this? Like, this is exactly what Marcus was talking about. If you disagree, the masses will come for you. If you try to leave, the masses will condemn you. And then they'll blame whatever else, but not see why they wanted to leave. Like, it wasn't just because Randall cared for me. He also wasn't sure he liked where the clan was going. It wasn't just me. But he's a prick for saying it was, and then trying to just put the blame on other people. There's literally no self-reflection, no inward, nothing. Charisse flinched at his venomous look, unable to offer a reply. You're insane. We didn't make Randall into anything. That's a lie, a fucking lie. The Mavar strained against the two agents' grip, and they had to struggle to keep him held back. We were there for him from the beginning. We joined him because he had a fucking goal, a purpose. Then he just decided to turn his back on us and do whatever the hell he wanted because of you. We wanted his memory to live as a hero, not as a coward. Not a coward. He slowly went slack in the agent's arms, tense and shuddering. The next moment he broke down into harsh sobs, shaking his head violently. When I looked into his haunted, feverish eyes, the image burned itself forever into my mind. In death, Randall became more powerful than he had in life. None of the Mavar believed, or just chose to ignore, that one of their own had killed him. More and more of them started using his name as a reason to attack the Askari, claiming that Charisse had ordered Randall to be tortured and killed. But as false and ridiculous as the rumours were, I could tell they were slowly taking their toll on Charisse. Every night she had to defend herself against accusations from all three houses, even her own. Why? I thought we shooed them out. People blamed her not only for Randall's death, but for the deaths of other vampires who died in later attacks without a single shred of evidence to go by. They didn't need evidence, not when they had their emotions. As much as Charisse had fought her hate-fueled enemies at first, I could tell that her strength was waning. Her confident figure now seemed thin and exhausted, unusually frail. Even her piercing grey eyes had turned lackluster, watching the world with a weariness that I'd never seen before. As if it just wasn't worth it to keep struggling. Sometimes, I wonder how things would be if Randall was still alive. Her low voice was almost carried away by the wind. I don't know. I don't either. But I'm not sure which is more painful. To think that the city would be different or that nothing would have changed. Charisse offered a quiet reply to my words, turning her head slightly towards me. Little by little, her lips took the thin, deformed shape of a hollow smile. A smile that seemed too tired to go on. Oh, that's depressing. I mean, Randall's route is the least depressing, like... Usually, like I said before, there's a point in the story where where it suddenly all just, like, crushes into my head. You know, it just all comes down. And that never really happened in Randall's route. I was never, like, stuck here, like, God, I don't know, I'm, like, almost speechless in, like, the almost empty emotions I'm feeling, if you understand what I mean. But with Randall, it wasn't like that. I got disgusted by his, in a way disgusted by his, NSFW scene. You can't really see the titty there. So his CG comes from the Rebellion ending, so that's what I'm gonna have to try and get now. I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I guess I'm gonna try to agree with Randall more, and I don't know. It's kind of hard, but I'll try. I'll just keep trying, I guess. But yeah, I will just pause here and I'll come back when I have potentially done something. I know the heckle is red in the CGs. I don't know why it's done that. I think if I exit now after going through the game again with blue hair, that it will change. But yeah, I will see you soon. Okay, I went through a guide and it still doesn't come up with anything. So I'm just going to pick the Rebellion and see what happens, because I can't do anything else. I went through a guide for this exact route. The Rebellion. The next few seconds felt frozen in time. Nobody moved, as if they were waiting for somebody else to move first. Just as we've already been through this, it's fine, we can skip it. You bastards made a real big mistake trying to fuck with my Valkii. You better run for your fucking lives. As if on cue, all the Mavar shot past me, rushing for my attackers. It was more than enough to make the other vampires turn and flee, running from the howling Mavar. Before long, they chased the others completely out of sight. Randall slowly turned towards me, his deep scowl lingering for a few seconds longer. Valkii. He suddenly grabbed my shoulders, pulling me against his chest, but right as Randall was about to kiss me, he hesitated, leaving less than an inch between our faces. Kiss him? Why not? I stood on my toes to kiss Randall, planting my lips on his. Soon I could feel his hand pressing firmly against the back of my head, keeping me in the embrace, while his free arm squeezed my waist tightly. But the cool touch of his lips didn't last long, and before I knew it, he was already pulling back, wearing a worried frown. Christ, sorry we were so late. He heaved a sigh, running a hand through his hair. We tried to follow you from the club, but we got held up by some of those Ascari fuckers. I was sure we outnumbered them. But you're okay, aren't you? They didn't hit you or anything. His eyes darted over me worriedly. Again, I've never said anything. Actually, this might be from where I did the Mavar one, before, like on Marcus's route. Ha, you really think I need an excuse for that? Randall barked out a laugh, but it didn't take long for his smile to fade back into a frown. Come on, let's get out of here before the Ascari or the Gulls pay us a visit. I got a safe ride that'll take us back. Goddamn, this shit's gonna give me grey hairs. I really don't know how to get the leader one. I don't know. This won't happen. With Randall sticking close to my side, we hurried to the street where a beat-up car was waiting for us. It was filled with a small group of Mavar who eagerly peppered me with thanks and congratulations as we rode back. I couldn't remember the last time I'd had such a warm reception. I'd probably gotten used to the Ascari's crowd's chilliness. But instead of riding to Santa Monica, we started driving towards the old parking garage where Randall told me a huge group had gathered. He explained that his beach house wasn't big enough to fit so many vampires and it wouldn't be safe to send people back into the streets. Let me just bring up this to... Okay, so this is apparently how I will get the Randall CG. This is... I don't know. This is the only thing I can think of. Right, okay. He'd already set up guards around the block and it seemed like we'd be in a defensible position for the night, but nobody knew what could happen. As soon as Randall and I stepped out of the car, a chorus of cheers rang through the garage. He hadn't been lying. It seemed like most of the city's Mavar had turned up, with plenty of new and old faces greeting me everywhere I looked. Most of them seemed as excited as they were nervous, but in some faces I still caught glimpses of dread. We should have a talk, Valkii, to get your thoughts on... Valkii, Randall. What is it, Jack? Running up to us at top speed, Jack skidded to a halt, his fangs bared in a grimace. I just finished talking to some of our our spies. And well, the Ascari and the Gulls, they're gonna jump our base in Hollywood tomorrow night. Sounds like Queen Bitch is really pissed. They got a kill-on-sight order for all of us, even Valkii. She. Randall curled one hand into a fist, sinking his nails against his bandaged palm. Kill on sight? I didn't think she'd... I didn't either. But I guess we were both pretty wrong, huh? This is all stuff I've seen before in the Marcus route, when I did the Mavar ending in the Marcus route, so this is nothing new. As more and more of the crowd started listening to our conversation, the chatter slowly faded into soft, worried murmurs and whispers. People started moving closer to Randall and me, as if they were expecting some kind of important announcement. Then it sounds like tomorrow's going to be our big last stand. A grim expression clouded Randall's features, where I couldn't see any trace of enthusiasm. We've got to make it count, because if we fuck this up, I don't think we'll be getting another chance. The Ascari and Gulls won't wait for us to get even stronger. When we head to the base, we could try and talk first, or just charge as soon as we see him, and end things as soon as we can. But as much as I'd like to reach some kind of last-minute treaty before shit kicks off, I got my doubts they'll feel much like talking. What am I supposed to say? There won't be a compromise, we have to fight. Then the time for talking's over. Tomorrow we'll kick their asses. A chorus of cheers rang out after Randall's reply. They seemed eager to tear into the enemy right now. What about Queen Bitch? Yeah, what are we going to do about her? What if she sticks around? Two loud voices impatiently called out from the crowd, echoed by murmurs of agreement. Yeah, there's still one thing we got to agree on. I know I've talked a lot of shit about Queen Bitch, and she deserves it, that fascist Prada-wearing fucker. She can't stay in this city, that's for fucking sure, but we don't have to kill her either. A few unhappy mutters sprang up at that, but most of the crowd waited for Randall to continue. Valkii, you've put up with more of her shit than any of us. What do you think? I hate her, but I don't want her dead. Yeah, I'm with you there. Then we'll let her leave the city as long as she never comes back, and she better not fucking come back. Randall's words were met with cheers of approval, though they seemed a little quieter than before. When tomorrow comes and we face them all head-on as a unified group, that means the real revolution is finally here. And it doesn't matter how many Ascari or goals there are, or how much blood we lose, or how long we have to struggle for our rights. Because nothing can stop us now. As Randall's last words echoed through the garage, a chorus of frenzied cheers and yelling surrounded us. But finally the group began to disperse, heading off to prepare weapons or settle down for the rest of the morning. Randall was still standing beside me, his eyes closed in a brooding look. Wait, what about Andre? Andre? If we catch him, he's gone. That one's not up for debate. There was a sharp finality in his voice, although the harshness in his voice didn't seem aimed at me. Come here for a second, Valkii, I want to talk to you. Reaching out to gently grasp my arm, Randall pulled me towards one corner of the garage, where the other's curious gazes couldn't follow us as easily. I could tell his emotions were running high, an obvious stress weighing on his shoulders as we walked. I just want to say, I'm real happy you stayed with me, independent, that you didn't get sucked up in the old leader's bullshit or anything else. It's not that I don't trust you, I'm just not used to people always saying what they mean, doing what they say they're gonna do. The war doesn't matter in the end. You're the most important to me, Randall. Damn it. I'm trying to be all serious here, and then you go and say cute shit like that. Although his chuckle sounded a little forced, Randall wrapped his arms around me in another hug, this one much softer than his earlier embrace. We spent the rest of the night sharing stories, just like we had that night at Saturnalia. With the threat of tomorrow's conflict looming over us, it was almost impossible to relax, but Randall seemed to be trying his hardest to forget about it. Blah blah blah. I dozed off on Randall's shoulder. A brief escape from thoughts of what was to come. I would be surprised if this gave us the CG, unless that other walkthrough lied to me. The smell of anxiety and bloodlust hung in the air. Mavar lurked in the alley on either side of me, murmuring among themselves quietly. The fight coming up is pretty much exactly the same, so I will be skipping through that. As prepared as we were, it still felt like anything could happen at any moment. But the minutes dragged on in silence. This is going to be a long one, but I'm going to finish this ending. An hour earlier, we'd all left the parking garage together, and no one wanted to stay behind. Some of the rebels went back to Santa Monica, setting up preparations at the house in case we needed to fall back. The rest of our group insisted I come with them, so I split off with a smaller force to defend them of our hideout in Hollywood. In the end, I decided to fight myself. I wanted to be part of the fray myself, not stick to the sidelines. Randall offered me several weapons, so I chose to fight at a safe distance with a gun. This is what it's telling me to say, so. I went with a pair of heavy pistols, tucking spare clips into my jacket. It was enough to defend myself and help disable the enemy, but I hadn't been in a real fight against other vampires yet. I just have to trust my instincts would match theirs. We were spread out in front of the hideout's entrance, keeping an eye out for any Golgotha or Ascari, while other Mavar made sure passing humans didn't get too close. A street or two away, Randall was waiting with another group ready to protect and secure our escape route if we needed it. Everyone had their weapons ready to attack on sight, but there was no sign of the enemies. So basically, on this one, it just the same kind of thing happens. Not pulling out my guns, I took aim. My finger squeezed the trigger so easily it shocked me. The bullets met their mark, burrowing into an enemy vampire's chest. I watched him collapse in a writhing heap, before another figure leapt towards me, trying to knock the guns out of my hands. 2 of my bullets shot through her eyes. A blood-curdling scream shot through my skull, but I cut it short with 2 more shots. Another vampire was already lunging out, knife glinting hungrily. Blah 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 blah. Okay, and I'm telling you, Mavar are the fucking chosen ones. Oh, you're full of shit, Paul. If I'm one of the chosen ones, how come I haven't gotten laid in 10 years, huh? As soon as I stepped inside the house, a deafening chatter attacked me. It was entirely packed tonight, without a single inch of empty floor space, but that was normal these days. I weaved my way through the crowd, heading towards the back room. I hadn't come here tonight to mingle with the Mavar. There was someone else I wanted to see. This looks like a CG. The lights were switched off, but the room wasn't empty. It is, okay. I do get the CG here, then why do I need the other one? A tall, lone figure stood before the mirror, staring at his reflection intently. He didn't seem to notice I'd arrived. You look handsome, Randall, don't worry. Randall flinched, a look of confusion flickering across his face. His eyes stayed on his reflection for a moment longer, almost like he thought it had spoken to him, before they slid over to me. Valkii. After a short pause, Randall broke into a smile. Ah shit, I forgot tonight was our movie date. Guess I'll have to give you something later to make up for it, huh? He let out a soft snicker, his voice as warm and affectionate as ever. That's a nice CG. I'd moved into the beach house with Randall and we shared this rundown bedroom. It was a little cramped, but things worked out. He always seemed happy whenever we spent time together. In fact, as time went on, he started avoiding his clanmates more and more, making up excuses so we could talk alone instead. But ever since the war ended, I noticed Randall's behaviour had slowly begun to change. He was drawing a lot more, scribbling on just about everything he could. Paper, tables, napkins, his mirror, even his hands. A lot of it was artistic, the usual grotesque figures he seemed to enjoy sketching. Other times, though, Randall wrote indecipherable words, long strings of letters that I couldn't make heads or tails of. He never gave any explanations when I asked, only that he was drawing whatever he felt like, and the drawings seemed to bring him comfort. I found him like this more frequently too, standing in front of the mirror staring at his reflection. Again, he always evaded my questions, offering me something like, "I can't tear away from my beautiful face," or "I was just practicing kissing." Maybe he'd finally explain himself one day, but until then I was left mystified by his strange habits. Somehow, several months had already flown by. After the huge fight, we let Charisse escape the city, along with the large group of Ascari still loyal to her. The last we'd heard, she was heading down to San Diego, which had a fairly small coven and no real leader. Nothing bad could happen there, surely. As for Andre, nobody was able to catch him. He must have left LA right after the final fight, with a large number of Golgotha following behind. Randall was furious when he found out. For weeks afterwards, he sent search parties to comb the surrounding cities for Andre, to no avail. Eventually, Randall seemed to forget about him. Mentioning Andre's name still made him stiffen, but he didn't have the same violent reaction as before. Although I had a feeling he was always at the back of Randall's mind. Why? I'm not sure I understand what their beef is. With no more strict rules in place, the Coven had settled down into a strangely easy pace. Although Randall's clan of rebels didn't technically exist anymore, the number of vampires who looked up to him seemed to grow every night. Some of the Ascari and Golgotha even gravitated towards him, drawn by the increasing amount of stories and legends people shared. But as the war's chaotic night slowly faded into a distant memory, it seemed like Randall would never escape the role of leader, the leader that everyone wanted him to be. People always came to him with problems, begging him to fix them or offering new ideas for laws to keep the Coven safe. Others wanted Randall to help liberate covens from Ascari rule, like the one in San Francisco, or use his power to influence other leaders. And amidst all that attention, adoration, and the unending stream of demanding voices, the only voice I never seemed to hear was Randall's. Randall's fingers trailed across his face, threads of messy blonde hair caught between his fingers. These days, he didn't seem to care as much about his appearance. "Glad you're here, Valkii. I was getting real lonely without you." Instead of turning to look at me directly, Randall only met my gaze in the mirror, through the fingertips and ink that framed his face. "Felt like you were gone a long time." "Well, you should come with me next time." "Nah, I think you should just stay with me." He let out another mild chuckle, shaking his head to himself. Then, after a last long look in the mirror, Randall turned to step towards me. His arms curled around my waist, gently pulling me into an embrace, and he leaned down to offer me a firm kiss. But as Randall stroked one hand through my hair, and I felt his wide, unbeating chest pressing softly against mine, his lips seemed colder than they ever had before. "There's no happy endings in this game." I don't care about getting the Golgotha ending, so I'm not going to go through and do that. I just want to see what this did. Is this still Golgotha? I'm trying to skip this. And this is long. Wait, Randall's Ascari route. Okay, oh, We have blue now. We have blue now. I didn't actually print screen this before, so I need to do it again. I mean, I did print screen it. I just missed it. I didn't do it rather. Okay, endings. Randall. Huh. That is the one I needed. Did the guide lie to me? Or did I just miss it somehow? A basic ending guide. Randall IV. Leader variant. Yeah, that's a lie, I guess. Oh no! Oh my god, okay. So I don't need to do the leader one. I could also get that ending by siding with Randall. Oh my god, I just didn't read that part. Okay. So now I can go and get Randall's secret ending. I'm pretty sure I can do that anyway. So yeah, since this one was super long, I'm sorry about that, but yeah. I will see you in the special ending in the next one.